friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here to talk about potatoes. And I'm sorry, but I had meant to do this video much sooner and forgot all about it until just today. I got a question about how I preserve the potatoes from my garden. Now you'll see here this jar of dehydrated potatoes. These ones are not mine. These are the ones I actually buy and stock up on from Mother Earth products. And you might wonder why I do that. And I'll get to that in a minute, but you can dehydrate your own potatoes. I personally have just never done that. However, this would be the one thing, if I ever do get into dehydrating my own, this would be the one thing I would blanch before dehydrating. Because if you don't blanch your potatoes first, when it comes to dehydrating, then they will turn black in the drying process. Just consider this is because they're oxidizing, just like they do when you cut a potato and then just leave it out and exposed to oxygen. It'll eventually darken and turn black. Well, the same happens in the dehydrating process, but it happens a little bit quicker. So that's why you do need to blanch. And you can do it where you either slice them into slices like you would do for making scalloped potatoes or even moussaka, or you can dice them up like that. I haven't decided if I ever get around to dehydrating them which way I would do it. Usually when I'm making a moussaka, then I'm gonna just cut one of my fresh potatoes and do it that way, or scalloped potatoes or whatever it is you're gonna do. So I like to purchase the Mother Earth products potatoes just to have on hand for making soups and stews, because it's really easy to throw them in there, and then save my homegrown potatoes for other things. I think 2017 actually was the last year that I canned potatoes. So these ones are from 2017, but I do can my own potatoes. I do not cook the potatoes or blanch them first before canning. The first time I did that back in 2013, because I looked it up online and everything I came across said you should cook them first. They were horrible. I hated them. And I did eventually use them up and found ways to use them up, but they were just, yeah. And so the next time I decided to can potatoes, I was kind of afraid to do it, but I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and try raw packing my potatoes and see if I like that better. And I ended up doing a video, doing a side-by-side comparison of the raw packed potatoes to the ones where I had cooked them first. And I tell you, the raw packed ones, not only does it save a step, they turn out so much better flavor-wise and texture-wise. Now, the reason some people will cook them a little bit first before canning them is you can see here how you'll see it's very starchy. Even turning this, you'll see some water here, but all this right here is starch from the potatoes. By cooking them first, that helps prevent some of that, but not all of it. You'll still get starch in your water if you cook them first. And it's really not that big of a deal because you can simply pour them into a colander and rinse them. To me, that's easier than bothering with cooking them first, especially if I end up with a better product anyway, a better texture and a better flavor. Now, as far as peeling the potatoes first, and I don't know for sure about dehydrating, it's possible, and maybe somebody else can answer this question in comments down below, because somebody was asking me, why do everybody say you have to peel your potatoes before you dehydrate? Now, the only reason I could think if you actually have to is possibly I could see the skins getting maybe papery, but I don't know. I've never tried it, so I can't answer that. So again, I hope some people will come in here. If they peel or don't peel their potatoes before dehydrating, please let us know down below how it turns out or why you do or do not. Now, I know when it comes to canning, I don't know why it's not a rule. People talk about some things when it comes to canning as if it's a rule, because when they heard it, they thought it was a rule because someone said, oh, you should peel your potatoes. And then pretty soon everybody's saying you have to peel your potatoes before you can them. Well, no, you don't. You can leave the skins on if you want. We just prefer, for a lot of the dishes I'm going to use potatoes, especially canned ones in, I would prefer to have them peeled first, and that's the only reason I take that extra step. Now, something like the little baby potatoes that have the very, very fine skin and you can just scrub them up and can them, I can see doing that. Just those little small ones you get, some people will do that, and I think that's a great idea. Or if you have red potatoes, I personally wouldn't see the point in peeling them first before canning, especially if you like your peels on your potatoes. Now, my intention of canning the potatoes was to be able to have something on hand if I wanted to quickly make some mashed potatoes. Well, they're already cooked, so all I have to do is heat them through and then mash them up myself. But the other option was to use in potato salad. This is how I like to use my canned potatoes the most, is for making a potato salad. And just like with a lot of other things, I'd prefer not to have the peels on my potatoes when I'm making a potato salad. Again, it's entirely a matter of choice. It shouldn't be dependent on what somebody else's tastes are, what you should or should not do. When you go look this stuff up and you can't find anyone that says why you have to do something, it probably comes down to it was a rule that somebody set in place because that's what they do, because it's their own personal preference. So check all these things out for yourself. So there's only two main ways I like to preserve my potatoes, canning being one of them, which again, I haven't done, well, it'll be 3 years now that I haven't done it because I have so many potatoes canned up right now. But now what I do, these are the ones from this year, is I had to kind of work with this a little bit to find out the best way to do it. Because if you can keep your potatoes whole like this in storage and use them fresh throughout the whole year if you do it right. And I had to play around with some different methods. And this can apply to many other root vegetables such as sweet potatoes, carrots, turnips, those kind of things like that. And here's the thing, if you live in a really hot climate, that stays hot year round, it may not work for you unless you have a root cellar. And I don't even know how that works in really hot climates. Can you put in a root cellar and it would stay cold enough? I would assume it would, but I don't know because I don't live in a hot climate. So, and around here, people just don't have root cellars, partially because we live in a cooler climate anyway, and because we live in a very wet climate that basements and root cellars and those kind of things are actually very rare because we get such a great amount of rain here. So what I have found works best for me is to take my potatoes, rinse them off. I don't scrub them. I just rinse all the main dirt off of them, grass clippings and whatever it is I've been growing them in, and I let them dry, and then I layer them into cardboard boxes. So here's a picture from last year when I got over 100 pounds of potatoes. Last year I bothered weighing all my potatoes. I didn't do that this year. And you can see I have 3 pretty good sized boxes all full of potatoes. I find cardboard to be best. You don't want plastic boxes. You probably could use them, but you would still need to make sure there's some kind of airflow. So how I do that is I put a layer of straw or hay on the bottom of the boxes, then I put a layer of potatoes. Then I spread a layer of straw or hay, whatever I have on hand at the time, over the top of those potatoes, and then just keep repeating that process, kind of like building a lasagna, until I have the boxes full. And that was the best method I found to keep, because the whole idea is you want lots of airflow going around the potatoes and you don't want them touching each other. You want to keep them pretty well spread out. So keeping that straw in there keeps that airflow, keeps them from touching each other. It's when the potatoes are sitting next to each other, that's where they're going to start to rot. So I didn't get one rotten potato last year doing the straw method, so I'm doing it again this year. And those potatoes lasted us clear through the whole year. And I was still working on those potatoes when I went to plant them, the baby ones that were left in there, for the next year, for this year. And so I'll leave them baby ones in there, them little ones. And yes, by that point, some of them were starting to soften because they'll still do that. But they're still good as long as they're not rotten. You know, if you're going to cook them anyway, that's just not a big deal. But that took pretty much the whole year for it to get to that point. So it just really, part of that's going to depend also on how fast you're going to work through your potatoes. And yes, in some places, you might be best just to leave your potatoes in the ground and only go out and dig them up as you need them. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I don't do that here, but a lot of people can pull that one off depending on their climate and what they have going on in their garden areas. Now, for me, I find it best to get my potatoes up and out of the way right away. Then I like to plant the amaranth. Now this year I decided to try leaving some of the potatoes in as long as I could, and dug up some of them to make room for my amaranth plants, and then planted the rest of my amaranth around them, the ones I'd left. But the problem with that was that then when I went to dig up the rest of the potatoes, I had no signs of where the potatoes had been growing, and so I'm guessing there's still quite a bit out there, because I keep having to go and try to dig around and see, okay, where are these potatoes? I'm not sure if I got them all yet. So basically what I'm doing is letting the chickens find them, and then when I see a potato exposed, oh, there's another one, I go out there and dig those up. So that's so 2 reasons why I don't like to leave mine in through the year is, again, coming back to our heavy amounts of rain. It might be okay for potatoes that are going to turn to seed, and grow new plants for the next year, but the ones that stay in the ground until through the year, because of all the rain, they're going to be more apt to either rot or they're just not very good. The quality of them changes. And again, I'm assuming that's from the heavy rains that we have. And then the other reason why, obviously, all my garden areas get opened up to the chickens for the rest of the year, so they can till the ground, get up the baby slugs, the slug eggs, any other bugs that are nuisances to the garden, and they keep that all cleaned up really good. And plus it just gives them more area to roam and to find more bugs, because it's healthy for them. As such, if I leave the potatoes in the ground and then they start digging them up, if I catch them right away, it's fine. But if I leave them out there, those strong feet and claws will tear those potatoes to shreds. And a couple of the chickens have found they really like the taste of the raw potatoes, and so they will eat them. So I have to get them all dug up as soon as I can. So if I know they're there, I try to get them, and then if the chickens happen to find some, and then I'll go rescue what I can. So that's why I don't leave them in the ground through the year, but that can work. Now let me reiterate something, that cooler climates, or keeping the potatoes in the coolest place that you have where it's not going to freeze. So like for us, keeping them out in the shop, we don't get a lot of hard freezes where we are, but occasionally we do. So I one year tried keeping them out in the shop, and that year we got a hard freeze and the potatoes froze. You really don't want your potatoes to freeze. It's the same thing again, it's going to change the texture, and then it's going to cause them to rot faster if you leave them there. So you want to keep them in a climate controlled place that also stays very cool but not freezing. So we have a back room, which is where our main pantry is. We have several different food storage areas, not even just here on this property, but our main pantry, we keep that room very cool. It's as far away from the wood stove as it can get, so very little heat gets back in there. So that's where we keep the potatoes. Or if I'm going to hang onions, I'll do that as well. So as long as your root vegetables are stored in something where they can have plenty of airspace and they're not touching each other and are in a cool climate controlled area, then they should keep pretty good for you for pretty much the whole year. At least several months they should last. So in most cases when we're using potatoes, I hardly ever use my canned potatoes except for in the summertime when I'm making potato salad. And so I like my potatoes like this. I like to be able to cut them up fresh and fry them, or making whatever it is I'm going to make out of them. As I mentioned, in moussaka, and I do plan on doing a recipe video on moussaka soon, hopefully. So anyway, yeah, this is I just love being able to use potatoes fresh as much as I can. So though canning them is great, and I love dehydrated for making soups. That's the only thing I really use dehydrated potatoes for. Everything else, fresh potatoes. So soups and stews, mashed potatoes or potato salad, and then everything else I use the fresh potatoes. And even though I don't know if I can really call them fresh if they've been sitting back there for months, but they're like fresh potatoes for most of the year, and that's how I use them. All right, well, I hope you found this helpful, and even if it might be too late for this year's harvest, hopefully you'll have this information to put away for next year when you go to plant your potatoes and harvest them, and consider how you want to put them up. And go look up and read some comments below to see if anyone shares any information about how they like to dehydrate their potatoes, and you might find some good ideas on the best ways to dehydrate, because I know people will dehydrate them like this, or in slices, or even grate it up for hash browns. So, all right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.